Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Recording 6, Chapter 11, The End of the Story. In this chapter, we are going to discuss one of the most mind-bending passages of the Du'a, one that has much potential to be misunderstood. Fasten your seatbelt and get ready for a ride. You punish whomsoever you want, however you want, by whatever means you want. You have mercy upon whomsoever you want, however you want, by whatever means you want. This is one of the most difficult phrases of the Du'a to comprehend. However, once we understand it, this will unlock the truth behind many secrets of creation. It has many different levels, but in this book, we will only address the one which has practical relevance. See the following verses from the Quran. God says, "The outcoming of all matters belongs to God." Quran chapter 22, verse 41. Elsewhere, "And towards God will be the outcome of all matters." Quran chapter 31, verse 22. Elsewhere, the outcome belongs to taqwa. Quran chapter 20, verse 132. If we can bring these three verses together, it will help us to solve the apparent puzzle in the Du'a's words. We want to untie that knot, which, if a person can untie, would have removed the barrier stopping them from being able to surrender in life and reach acceptance. At any given time, if we were to think about all the different processes that have to take place in order for us to function, it would be overwhelming. Just now, your heart is beating, your kidneys filtering blood, your lungs are inflating and deflating. We are barely aware of the thousands of things like this that are occurring at every moment just to keep us alive. If we were to look at things rationally and logically, we might be overcome by fear or anxiety. At any point, anything could go wrong and ruin everything, like you have seen in the movies. How, at one moment, a flood can come and take everything with it. It would be hard to ever relax if we were forever on the brink of potential crisis. This is why, sometimes, smarter people become more anxious. They are more aware of all the ways things could go wrong. With this in mind, Imam Sajjad-e-Azam's words and those of the Quranic verses are of great comfort. We can draw three conclusions that will calm our hearts and soothe our concerns, if we accept them. 1. The outcome of affairs belongs to God. This world is filled with conflict, as everyone has their own goals and aims, often at odds with one another. Despite this, we can rest assured that the ultimate outcome is not in favor of the one who is stronger or more cunning. The outcome of affairs belongs to God. Do not imagine that the events or affairs that impact your world and life are out of His control. Everything is in His hands. There is no place that is not His. Not a leaf falls but that He knows it. Quran chapter 6, verse 59. That even something as insignificant and common as a leaf falling cannot happen without God knowing means that He is surrounding everything and has complete dominion over all things. This gives us comfort, because during the entire course of our lives in this world, purgatory, and the hereafter, there is no moment and no event unless the end is for Him. 2. The outcome of affairs is towards God. There is no affair that does not have a divine and monotheistic result, one that is perfect in every aspect. This can be difficult to appreciate sometimes, but only because our view of events is limited and we see a small piece of the whole. The part we see may seem to be defying God, but if we were able to see the entire picture, we would appreciate that ultimately all events result in one perfection, God Himself. The entirety of creation is in a state of constant progression towards the ultimate destination of unity with God. To God it belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and to God is the final return. Quran chapter 24, verse 42. 3. The outcome belongs to those who have taqwa. Our unique feature as human beings, one of the things that distinguishes us from animals or non-sentient beings, is that we have a higher way to shape our destiny than them. We can be friends with God and live with Him. It is important to reflect on the meaning of taqwa, an often misunderstood concept, in order to have a better understanding of this verse. Consider the following analogy. A person is walking down a busy main road, with many strangers walking in the same direction. They are all busy, walking quickly to get to their destinations. No one is paying any attention to anyone else around them. In contrast, imagine a couple in the honeymoon phase of the relationship. They are walking along the exact same main road together, but each is very aware of the other. Is she happy? Did he laugh? What is she paying attention to? After walking for a while, one might ask the other if they're tired and need a break, or if they want to stop at one of the shops along the way. In the first situation, those walking along the street did not pay attention to or notice the others around them. But in the second, they were constantly aware and mindful of them. This is what taqwa looks like. Taqwa is when we are aware and mindful of God, think of Him and live with Him in every moment of our lives. We hold Him in our hearts and minds. In this verse, the Quran is saying that when you have this relationship vis-a-vis God, the outcome of your affairs will always be in your favor and your best interests. Even if you face challenges on the way, in the end, everything will work out for you. All we need to do in order for this to be applicable to us is to live with God in a real way. Living with God is not simply believing in His existence or praying to Him because it is obligatory. Living with God is when God has the prime position in your heart and you consider Him your friend. Living with God. Now, let's look at Imam Sajjad's words again, using these verses of the Quran. In the third verse, God says that if we live with Him, then the outcome of our affairs will always be in our favor. In this section of the Du'a, Imam Sajjad is stressing the same point. He says that if you are friends with God, then you need not worry about anything. Do not worry if there were problems in your past, if you think your genes are not perfect, or you grew up in a troubled home. The outcome of all matters is with God. He will bring you good results despite your past or present state. You show mercy upon whomsoever you want, however you want, by whatever means you want. The ultimate result of affairs is in God's hand. Even if you have the worst past, even if you have made the worst mistakes, do not worry. If you go to God, He will fix the outcome for you. He can save anyone. You show mercy to whomsoever you want. How this happens can be as a result of anything, big or seemingly small. God can change your destiny through the smallest act of goodness or selflessness that you have shown, by whatever means you want and however you want. When God is on your side and wants you to succeed, there is no limit to how much He can help you. In one moment, we can go from the lowest of the low to incredible peaks. In the story of Prophet Moses, the magicians of the Pharaoh's court are such a story. They did not believe in God until the day they encountered Prophet Moses. But in that encounter, they suddenly found such strong faith that they were able to defy the Pharaoh. From abject disbelief in the servants of a tyrant to the peak of spirituality in the space of one day. When a person relies on God, that no matter what state they are in, God can save them from the darkness. He brings them out of the depths of darkness into light. Quran chapter 2, verse 257. When God is their guardian, they need not worry about what has happened in their past. God will change the evil deeds of such people into good ones. Quran chapter 25, verse 70. Living on our own. In the same phrase, Imam Sajjad also talks about the other possible version of events. What would happen if we decided to live without God in our own? In that case, even if we have the best past and the most incredible upbringing, we will still lose our way. The son of Nuh still drowned, despite his father being a prophet of God. You punish whomsoever you want, however you want, by whatever means you want. Just as our past problems do not dictate our future failures, similarly, any advantages that we may have had in the past do not necessarily determine our future success. Even if we are from a great family, have lots of knowledge, or have prayed and fasted a lot, as long as we choose to live on our own rather than with God, we can make a mistake and lose everything in one moment. A believer should be careful not to rely on their own actions. We should rely on God's mercy. A person who is poor in front of God says, God, I have nothing. God says, don't worry, everything is in my hands. The person says, the whole world is against me. God says, don't worry, the end of everything is in my hands. He who is guided will never lose in the world. Have no fear or grief, we shall certainly save you. Quran chapter 29, verse 33. If your heart feels that God is in charge and that He has your back, the inner sense of security will be unshakable. But for those who are on God's side, there is no fear, nor shall they grieve. Quran chapter 10, verse 62. We have not yet tasted life with God. Once we have, peace and serenity will fill our existence. It is He who sent down tranquility into the hearts of the believers, to add faith to their faith. The forces of the heavens and the earth belong to God. He is all-knowing and all-wise. Quran chapter 48, verse 4. If we live on our own, the fear that what we have may one day be lost will translate into insecurities that overwhelm us. The moment we build our lives with God, we are sure we will be fine, because what is with God will remain. What you have runs out, but what is with Allah remains. Quran chapter 16, verse 96. Even the moments of our lives will become eternal if we are living with God. If God is in my heart, as a smile at my family, that smile will forever be there in the universe and create life for me. Chapter summary. In this chapter, Imam Sajjad gave us two ways of living, with God or on our own. He said that if you live with God, then there is nothing that can harm you. A difficult past, a family who did not support you, illnesses that have taken their toll, any number of problems, as long as you live with God, you can be sure that the eventual outcome will be in your favor. On the other hand, for someone who wants to rely on their own resources and actions, Imam Sajjad reminds them that at any point, they may well ruin their gains with a mistake. Even if a person is proud of their good deeds or knowledge, we should not forget that there were many people with even greater actions whose stories did not end well. At one point, they were tempted, made a mistake that cost them dearly, and lost everything. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chapter 12. God expects nothing from us. Every time you think that the dua has reached its peak and cannot get any better, you read the next phrase and realize you are mistaken. I had a paradigm shift in my own personal understanding of my relationship with God after reflecting on the following phrase. I really hope that you too are able to gain from the beautiful lessons contained in this section. We know now for sure what we deserve in exchange for our deeds. Still, your knowledge about us and our knowledge that you shall never let us down have urged us to desire you, even if we do not deserve your mercy. However, you are the worthiest of conferring it upon us. The phrase starts with a reminder that relying on our actions alone will not get us far. You will remember that this has been among the key themes of the dua. In fact, the dua began by teaching us not to attempt to go through our actions, but to instead to rely on knowledge. It is acknowledged how flawed and limited our actions are, and that any good in them, however small, is ultimately from God. We now know for sure that what we deserve in exchange for our deeds. It may be a good idea now to pause and ponder if this truth has sunk into your heart or not. For the dua to really have the impact that Imam Sajjad desires, we must take this journey with him. Now, on behalf of humanity, he admits that we know for sure that our actions are not to be relied on. Do we feel that? Can we enjoy the Imam-ul-Islam in saying this? Or do we still labor under the illusion that we may be able to perform some good actions and change the game? Humanity's track record. In the stages of human growth, improving one's actions is actually the easiest step compared to, for example, cultivating one's inner qualities. However, even when it comes to something as simple as actions or manners, most of us are still failing. Most of us are not polite and do not exhibit beautiful manners with our family, friends, or in society. Therapy rooms the world over are filled with people trying to overcome the trauma caused by the actions of their family members and friends. We have managed to create self-driving cars, robots that deliver food, and artificial intelligence that can write poems. Yet, we have not learned how to not get angry, how to be kind, or how to listen. These are all within the first, most basic stage of human growth. There are many stages above this, such as being able to truly see the beauties of life, being not just peaceful but joyful in difficulties, and so on and so forth. Greed, selfishness, and other human qualities have made this world so difficult to live in that some are attempting to make life multiplanetary and go to Mars. If that seems ridiculous to you, remember that we have similar fantasies on a lesser scale when we want to leave our old patterns in life behind and move to a new city or travel to a far-off land. When we travel, initially we feel so free. Slowly though, once we spend enough time in the new place, we recreate the same patterns and once again lose the way to our inner joy, necessitating travel to a newer place to escape these same repetitive patterns we create. No judgment with God. Imam Sajjad is not reminding us of this to make us feel bad. Instead, he wants us to learn to give up on this mission impossible. He says that Insan has tried the same methods for thousands of years and has still not managed to fix its actions nor enjoy its own company. Is it not time to realize this method is wrong? How many more times do we want to try on our own and fail? Sometimes we remain stuck in the same rut, despite the fact that it's clearly not working, because doing anything else seems overwhelming. We might think that God will hate us or punish us if we fail to improve. To this, Imam Sajjad would reply that we clearly still do not know God. Forget everything you have heard about him, and let's meet him afresh through the words of Imam Sajjad. There are two beautiful things about God, which can give us unlimited hope and change the way we understand our lives. 1. God knows us. Your knowledge about us. The first thing that reassures Imam that God will not reject us is that he knows us better than we know ourselves. You may have experienced times when you strive to change, and others could not understand how tough it was for you. You were the one living the struggle, and so only you could truly know how difficult it was. Imam Sajjad says that God is not like those other people. He knows how challenging it was for you to change yourself. God is the one who brought us into this world and caused us to grow from a small fetus to a baby, when we were born and could not even feed or burp ourselves without help. It was God who sent people to help us. Gradually, he caused us to grow and be able to do more to look after ourselves. Now that we have grown up, we feel we should be able to do anything, until reality in the form of failure hits us like a ton of bricks, causing us to feel miserable about ourselves. But from God's perspective, he does not expect anything from us. He knows that even when we do things right, it is only through his help. So, when we fail, he does not become upset or disappointed. He just asks us to return to him because with him, we can succeed the next time. This is a very important point. Often we complain to God because we feel like his expectations for us are too high. How can you expect me to be good and virtuous at all times? This is because we were taught incorrectly. Imam Sajjad says, God does not expect anything from us. God knows us and our weaknesses. He knows that if we had had a bad dream, we wake up in a bad mood, and it is harder to be a nice person. If we have a headache, it impacts our behavior. If we hear bad or stressful news, then we cannot focus on being there for our family. When we are young, we have countless challenges. When we are old, we have different ones. God knows. God knows you and your challenges. There is a beautiful line in Du'a Kabir. O the one who created us from nothing. We have come from nothing. God did not create us to put pressure on us and expect us to do things we cannot manage. No, he created us out of love. He knows how hard it is for us to change and do good. He created us to give to us, not to take or receive from us. O mankind, it is you who stand in need of God, while God is free of need and has abundance, the praiseworthy. Quran chapter 35, verse 15. This is such a beautiful verse. Let's go through it together. It has 3 parts. In the first, God is talking to us and reminding us that he knows we need help. He knows things are difficult for us. In the second, he reminds us that he is not in need of anything. Again, this is a reminder that our perspective is sometimes flawed. We have learned to pray for the pleasure of God or to do good in order to make him happy, as if God was the one in need of our actions. In this verse, God is reminding us that the truth is actually the exact opposite. We are the ones in need, and he is the one who has everything. We do not need to do things for God. On the contrary, he stands ready to do things for us. This takes us to the third part. Although God is self-sufficient and has no need for anything, this does not mean that he is indifferent to us or our needs. In fact, his benevolence and generosity are so great that he is deemed Hamid or praiseworthy. He wants to give us things. God is not expecting us to bring anything to the table. He has done all of the legwork. He has brought everything. Many of us misunderstand this, so despite years of effort, we are still empty-handed. We were under the misapprehension that we had to refine ourselves, to be patient, grateful, strong, and then take these qualities to God so that he would be happy with us. However, all along, God was simply waiting for us to go to him so that he could bestow us with patience, strength, gratitude, and whatever else we needed. He did not expect us to learn everything and then present our knowledge to him. He was waiting for us to bring him our questions so that he could give us knowledge, to bring him our weakness so that he could fill us with strength. He did not expect us to find guidance and then go to him. He was ready to help us find the way. He did not expect us to feel better on our own. Rather, he is the one who will make us feel better. Truly, it is in the remembrance of God that hearts find peace. Quran chapter 13, verse 28. Once we realize this, the pressure we have felt for years is suddenly lifted, and we realize that we were expecting far too much from ourselves. We were not meant to get anywhere on our own. All we had to do, all we could do, was to ask, and God was ready to give. At that point, Imam ﷺ's words in the White Qamar suddenly make perfect sense. God, forgive the one who owns nothing but prayer. Again, please note that translations never do justice to the original Arabic of the du'as. The word ighfir is not just forgiveness. It is to fill the gaps and cover for the deficiencies in what is lacking in someone. God is ghafir because he compensates for the weakness of his creation through his own power. He compensates for our ignorance with his knowledge. He meets our abject needs with his possessions. That is what God's forgiveness means. He takes our bad and replaces it with his own good. This is the highest meaning of istighfar. It does not just mean I have committed a sin and I am sorry. Rather, it means, God, I have such stark needs. I want you to cover this need of mine with your abundance. 2. God does not give up on us. The second point about God's attitude towards us, which can be a source of immense hope, is that he will never give up on us. Imam al-Islam says, our knowledge that you shall never let us down has urged us to desire for you. Imam Sajjad al-Islam knows that God will never give up on or tire of us. There will never come a time where God might think that a person cannot be guided or corrected. He will never fail anyone. This is very important for us to know. In many countries, when a car is damaged to the point that it is no longer safe to be driven on public roads, or that repairing it would cost more than replacing it, it is written off, only considered worthy of being scrapped. Imam Sajjad al-Islam is saying that God will never write us off, no matter how broken we are. He always remains ready to help us. This is an incredibly beautiful and reassuring point from Imam Sajjad al-Islam. Imam al-Islam then preempts our concerns that perhaps we do not deserve this by noting that even if that is the case, God is so merciful and generous that he will help us regardless. Even if we do not deserve your mercy, you are the worthiest of conferring it upon us. This may be contrary to what we may have heard or learned over the years. We may have begun to believe that as a result of our sins, God might never love us, or we may forever be doomed. Imam Sajjad al-Islam reassures us that moment will simply not come. Imagine an artist who's drawing a picture. She looks at it and sees that it has not turned out as well as she hoped. She can do much better, so she throws it away and starts again. We might regard ourselves as if we were that piece of paper, that if we do not turn out as well as God had envisioned, he will just throw us away. Imam Sajjad al-Islam rejects this. This is not how God treats his creation. He loves us. If through our own actions we end up in a bad place, God will not just throw us away or write us off. He will be patient with us and help us until we become beautiful again. God is an artist with no discarded drafts. Once a being is created, it will not be thrown away. God's studio has no failed attempts. The secret to understanding religion. Reading through the pages of Du'a and seeing how Imam Sajjad al-Islam describes God, you may be blown away by the beauty of his words, but still struggle to reconcile his outlook with certain verses of the Quran or some aspects of religion. The Quran talks about hell, punishment, and impending doom. Is this not in direct contradiction with this beautiful image Imam Sajjad al-Islam is painting of God and his attribute towards us? In the Quran, God is explaining two scenarios at the same time. If you understand the difference between them, your question will be answered. The first one is telling the story of human beings if they rely solely on their actions, and the other takes into account God's interventions. First scenario. Sometimes God is describing what life would be like if we were on our own, and what the outcome of such a life would be. It is in this context that he talks of hell and suffering. If we think about it honestly, this is not difficult to accept. Do not think of the suffering of hell as an abstract, distant concept. Is life not hell when there is enmity between family members? Aren't too many lives made hellish due to jealousy or cheating? Is fear not ruining some of the most precious moments of our lives? Are we able to overcome and protect against all of these scenarios? Can we stop ourselves from drowning in our own insecurities? If we are honest with ourselves, we will admit that this Quranic message is undeniable. We cannot handle our destiny or our lives ourselves. Imam Sajjad acknowledged this in the Du'a. We now know for sure what we deserve in exchange for our deeds. Yet. Second scenario. This does not have to be the story of our lives. In other verses of the Quran, God talks about another way of life that is possible for us. God says that if we let Him into our lives, everything changes. That story would be very different. This time, the story starts. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. Now, our lives become full of mercy and compassion. He can cover up for any of our mistakes. Say, O my servants who have gone to extremes against themselves. Despair not of Allah's mercy, for indeed Allah forgives all misdeeds. Indeed, He is the oft-forgiving, the bestower of mercy. Quran chapter 39, verse 53. He can even transform our past mistakes into goodness. For them, Allah will replace their bad deeds with good. And Allah is ever forgiving and merciful. Quran chapter 25, verse 70. He can take us from darkness to light. Allah is the ultimate guardian of those who have attained faith. He brings them out of the darknesses into the light. Quran chapter 2, verse 257. The first Quranic perspective is not necessarily informing us of how our life is or will be. It is painting a picture of what life on our own would look like, so that we can decide if we want to continue alone or instead choose to live with God. It reminds us that any problems and challenges we may be facing are insurmountable if we do not get help. If we rely on our own resources, then fear, darkness, doubts, and insecurities will remain, and we will be mirrored in them forever, abiding therein for as long as the heavens and the earth remain. Quran chapter 11, verse 107. Why would we ever want to rely on our own resources? Imam Sajjad is advocating that we forget about this as a possible path altogether. He says that with God, all our failures will morph into success. Despite all our internal challenges, such as fear and pain, and external problems such as issues in our families or society, if we rely on God, He will bring us out of darkness. Even the phrase we quoted above, which referred to people remaining forever in self-created hells, has an ending that changes the game. There is a plot twist if God enters the picture. Abiding therein for as long as the heavens and the earth remain, unless God wills otherwise. Quran chapter 11, verse 107. When it is just us and our actions, the path is long and tiring, full of trouble and fear. The other path, the of reliance of God, is full of forgiveness, support, and light. We will no longer walk, we will be carried by His magnificence. Chapter Summary. In this chapter, we discussed important points about our relationship with God. The first point was that we often complain to God because we feel like His expectations for us are too high. But Imam Sajjad says that God does not expect anything from us. He knows us and our weaknesses and challenges, and He is always ready to help us. The second point we discussed was that God is not in need of anything, and we are the ones in need. He does not expect us to have all the answers or to fix everything on our own. Instead, He is waiting for us to come to Him for guidance and support, and He will provide us with the knowledge and strength that we need to navigate life's challenges.